To be on the left, but in the mirror it'd be on the right. Of course, we is both facing the same way, and the gun is upside down, so yeah, best not to play it too fancy.
What does a 17-year-old need with an AR-17? Can you explain that?
Okay.
Can you explain to me? I just want you to answer that one question. What does an underage minor need with an AR-17? Period. 15.
All right, you know what? Pull it out right there.
This is your brain. This is
liberty.
This is your brain.
Liberty.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Late Night with Leighton, me. We're just going to be hanging out tonight, kind of talking a little bit about what this show's going to be, what you're going to see on here. We'll cover a couple stories, talk a little bit about how my day and week in life has been lately, which is what you're going to see on the show mostly. It's kind of a solo/interview show. So occasionally when I get somebody on who either is non-political or maybe I just want to get to know a little bit better than what I can do on a group podcast with everybody over there with Outlawed Thoughts. This is a little bit different, a little bit toned down, and I hope everybody enjoys it. It is a live show, or at least I plan to make this a live show. It is live now, obviously, so if people do pop into chat, they can hang out, although because of what time it is, that is less likely. It is 1 a.m. in Alaska here, which makes it pretty late in most places, although I do know that it is 4th of July, so maybe some people were out and about and want to hop in the chat. But we're going to be covering a couple stories. I played some videos at the beginning there. I'll probably do that with most of the shows, just throw some stuff that I've edited over the last few years, maybe throw some clips of some other people's podcasts in there because I do a lot of that editing lately. We're going to look at a couple things. This was one thing I found funny over the weekend that we'll take a look at. This is Ilhan Omar getting booed off stage at a Somalian concert, I believe in either Colorado or Montana. I can't remember what state it was in, but this is just funny as all hell.
Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, please. No, please. Okay. Wait.
On behalf of Afro-Dudley, we want to welcome.
Hot damn, man. They are making a lot of noise there. They do not want her to say shit. And they're making it very clear. It's funny. We all talk about how fake politicians are and how we think that we don't understand it. Those are her own people that are booing her. And with their critical race theory backing and all the other racist bullshit that she's into, aren't those supposed to be the ones that like her? It's confusing to me how these politicians think that the demographics actually work in the real world, because how often these statistics that they put out are incorrect. It appears as though they're insulated in a little Washington, D.C. bubble of thought, where they think they're the most important thing that exists. So if they walk out on the stage, everybody, of course, is going to cheer for them. They're the Muslim woman. They're the black woman. They're the brown man or black man or white man, for that instance, who got into politics. And that's the only thing that's valuable about them, because the politics that they espouse, in her case, radical leftism, borderline complete socialism, in some cases it is complete socialism, isn't liked and isn't put into use in all actuality. Her own democratic establishment hate the politics that she espouses. This is the same case for AOC and the rest of her political flock that she runs with. These people aren't to be taken seriously, so much so that when she tries to get on a stage at a concert to be taken seriously in front of people that she claims to be speaking for, she's booed off the stage and isn't allowed to speak. And that is what we need to do with shithead politicians from here on out. If you see one of these people at an event like this and they're talking in public, let your voice be heard. And I think it's great. Moving on, we got a story out of Minnesota that I thought was hilarious. I saw this brought forward by Nick Ricada, actually just tonight on his show, so I thought I would cover it because he just mentioned it, and I found a news story for it. Minnesota lawmakers voted to legalize THC edibles. Some did it accidentally. So, what appears to have happened here, although we're going to read the story just a tad. Actually, we'll do this first. A new Minnesota law lets people 21 and over buy, consume food and beverage with small amount of hemp-derived THC. But some legislators might not have fully understood the bill before passing it. The new law says food and beverage cannot contain more than 5 milligrams of hemp-derived THC per serving and no more than 50 milligrams per package. Although marijuana-derived THC is still illegal in Minnesota, THC derived from hemp is chemically the same. Marijuana and hemp come from the same cannabis plant, though the plants are bred differently, with marijuana plants high in THC and hemp plants very low in THC. THC, or Delta-9, is the chemical that causes the high of marijuana. The nature of Republicans-controlled Senate has opposed recreational marijuana effort in the past, raises question about whether the legalization was accidental. Minnesota State Senator Jen Abler, a Republican from Anoka, told the Minneapolis Star-Tribune he did not realize this law would allow THC-infused edibles of any kind and thought it would only apply to Delta-8 THC products. So here is the situation broken down in a non-NPR shithead way. The Democrats actually did something good here. Nick Ricada said that on his stream, and he is 100% right. They did some hocus-pocus sneaky shit within the bill that they were passing through the Senate there. And that bill includes allowing hemp-derived THC edibles, specifically, quoting gummies, 5 milligrams, 50 milligrams. This is the same law we have in effect in Alaska, by the way. Now, not quite the same, but they have to be in 5 milligram increments, I believe, because you can typically only get 50 milligram or 100 milligram dosage here. This is similar to some other states. I believe they limit it to 5 milligrams as well. I think that's retarded, but it is what it is. That is exactly what has happened here in Minnesota, a state without legal marijuana, I might add you. They do not have recreational marijuana, but they now do have recreational edibles, whether they like it or not. And we can thank some probably shithead Democrats for that. So remember that when you are picking on both sides, I suppose. Next story I have here is infuriating beyond all belief, and it should piss people off. This is Stacey Abrams. The Abrams campaign has spent over $450,000 in private security, despite radical defund the police group ties. Now, I am not commenting on defund the police personally, myself. I am not for public policing. This is the policing that you have in the majority of the United States, most all of it. This is also against metro policing. This is something that Strexenhammer has talked about a lot. We have metro policing in the majority of these, even small cities in a way, where they literally equip themselves as though they are running into battle, and the response times are typically very low, whereas typically police officers and smaller communities, more on the sheriff side of things, although it can't support some corruption, it's a lot less likely, for instance, that a sheriff's office has corruption than a metro police, at least from what I understand. So I could see some argument there. I, for one, am not necessarily against defunding the police. I want them replaced with a private option. But the way that the left wants to defund the police is retarded, and I think even libertarians understand that. So moving forward with how we're dealing with this is a perfect example of something else I want to bring up, which is guns. Stacey Abrams multiple times come out, spoken against firearms, talked about stripping firearms, Lord's oversight, regardless. She's against guns, she's against the Second Amendment, and she's spending $450,000 a year on private security. And this is what we've seen over and over again with not only politicians, but bigwig actors and people in Hollywood. They seem to like to spend all this money on private security and personal well-being and making sure that their houses are in order on the inside and outside. But they'll ridicule other people for wanting the exact same treatment. That's a little bit funny to me, and I think it points out the hypocrisy of not only Hollywood and the general fame or famous people that exist in the world, but the politicians. It's something libertarians have recognized for a long time, and I think it's something more and more Republicans are waking up to day by day. Although I will say I am a little bit disillusioned from the effect of the left coming over to our side, as so many of them seem to be, rather than straying off in the direction of libertarianism, straying off in the direction of Antifa far left attitudes, which ultimately turns into far right attitudes, which is equally retarded. And this puts us back to square one, of course, where we have to build up a movement to outgrow these people. That's a very difficult thing to do. And I think it leads us into kind of the rest of what this show will be, which is more of a conversation about life and myself and the show and what I've been up to. I started Outlawed Thoughts, I think it was 3 months ago or something like that. And I always kind of expected to do multiple shows on the channel. I expected to do a whole lot on the channel on top of the show. Unfortunately, that's got a little bit more difficult. I'm working a lot, and on top of that, I'm doing some editing for Adam Nutter, and I'm doing some writing, or at least trying to, and all the midst of this, I'm kind of thinking about moving. And this is where I want to kind of talk about this. I want to talk about a little bit about how I'm looking at the world at 22 years old as a libertarian, how I see everything, everything that's happening, which is intense, right? I mean, it's intense to think about everything that's happened in the world, but I'm just going to limit it to the U.S., and I think that's insane enough. But a conversation about where I see everything going, a lot has changed over the last few years in my own belief system, not only in politics, but religion and life and the way that I live and just think in general. And because of that, I feel like it's important to talk about some of the things that I will ultimately see, or at least believe that I'll see in the near future. And some of those things include far-fetched ideas of secession, governments revolting against the feds, and things that I think a lot of people think are far-fetched. But I will progress otherwise. I think that we have come to a head in the United States of America. Not only economically, obviously, as we're seeing, we're about to be in a recession, which is meaningless anyway because we've been in a recession forever. This one is just going to make it worse because now we notice it, and now the Fed notices it. Of course, the Fed is the one who controls the money in the first place, and that basically makes money useless. But we all know that. So I think we are in trouble as a country. Not from a economic standpoint, because at the end of the day, that's small potatoes, right? I know how markets work. probably the majority of the people who will come across this episode also know how markets work. So if everybody knows how markets work, we all know that regardless of a recession, regardless of a market crash, that can always bounce back because a free market will outlast any of that, right? It'll always come back because there's humans here and we all want to live and make money and be profitable. But the fact is that's not the danger. The danger is that during some economic collapse, there's also some collapse of government or collapse within the government that lashes out onto the people more so. Obviously, collapse of government would be a good thing, but what if that collapse of government is because of a revolt against the people, because of some perceived reason, or perceived reason? Bear with me. All right, right back into it. Yeah, so what if there's a perceived, you know what, we're going to do this a little bit differently because I want to lay it out like this. I think we will have secession or a state attempting to leave the federal government, really attempting, meaning holding some kind of actual official vote on a floor that passes, this is going to go somewhere kind of decision. I think one of those are going to be made within the next 20 years, but I think it could be made much sooner than that. I think there's so many problems going on in the world right now, specifically in the United States, but even worldwide, right? You have war that the United States is raging in Ukraine, along with Ukraine, with Russia and everybody else. You've got all the involvement in the Middle East still continuing. You've got Yemen. You've got all these, you've got Taiwan with China. You've got India, who's always got something going on. All these places are always fighting, right? At home, we were always supposed to be copacetic because the government keeps everything copacetic, but that's not the case anymore. The government never really did keep anything copacetic. Just as I think more people are coming to realize that. More people come to realize that, the more people come over to the side of reason, which doesn't necessarily mean libertarianism. It could mean they're anarchists or anything in between. But people who recognize that the federal government and realistically state governments are not going to solve any of the problems that our country is actually facing, but rather that the people are going to need to solve those problems themselves. One of the most important things for me when July 4th comes around is to remember that although we gained independence as a country, we don't have our independence. I certainly don't, and you don't, and no one else does. We're completely forcibly dependent on the federal government. The vast majority of the country is. Some people break away to the woods and get away, but the majority are stuck. And that is by design. That's by design of the government, not only their feds, but the state. And so you get a sense of being politically trapped, but you also get a sense of being trapped within a government, right? And typically the way people get away from that is to go to the woods or to go to homestead or to buy an RV or to whatever the case may be. And those people are geniuses. They're smart. Get away from it. Two best pieces of advice I think anybody can hear, and two pieces I myself haven't heeded too well lately, has been to get out of the rat race and to leave the cities. Those are probably the two most valuable things that anybody in this world could actually accomplish. Get out of metro areas, get out of high dense population areas, build something that is yours, and do it with your own money. Meaning don't work for somebody else. Build a business, build an empire if you need to. But keep yourself sustainable without having to work for anybody else. Make sure that you're the one telling you what to do. And I think that's something I'm trying to get on track to do. Trying to move to Florida. That's step one. Moving to Florida gives me a certain bit of freedom that I don't have in Alaska. One of those biggest pieces that I think people overlook is the social aspect of life, right? Alaska is boring where I am. And I know people hear that and they go, well, what do you mean? It's not that the city is boring. It's that the government and the system within it has killed it. And so everything else within Seward that I used to love, I look at with a little tinge of annoyance. Because I know that the reason it is the way that it is because of the system that's been built up by the city council here, by the people who've run this town for 70 years. This town means something to me because my family used to live here. My dad remembers this town very fondly, and I love Seward. But Seward has died. This 4th of July proves it. See, I live in a tourist town. See, about 4 months out of the year, this town is jam-packed with people. Typically, we're a cruise ship port, and we're the end of the Seward Highway, where a lot of people come to hang out. But what you will find is that this year, this 4th of July, the numbers were minute compared to what they even were during the COVID times, the dark ages. And that's a little bit depressing. Because, of course, I don't want less people to be coming to a town that's entire economy is based off of people coming to the town. But the city of Seward doesn't do anything to fix this. In fact, they've just done more and more to hire and spend more, because that's what government does, of course. This is the bureaucracy of it all. We're all familiar with that. But it is a little bit aggravating to have to just watch it happen to a place that you love, a place that your family used to live in and still does. And so it leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth and a decision to make, which is ultimately that I'll probably be moving to Florida. I've looked at other states, including Georgia, and I don't know. The property prices are low. The problem with some place like that is that I can't get anybody else to move there with me. And I can't really get anybody to move with me to Florida either, at least not off the bat, but I can get people to move there eventually once I'm set up. And so that has become the goal, is to just do it that way. And maybe it turns out all right. Maybe it doesn't. If I move to Florida, I have unemployment, I guess technically I could collect stuff like that, but ultimately I could get my feet back under me within a month and start working. I figure it'd be pretty quick. If not, I should be able to line up a job before I get over there. Find some place to rent, save up enough money that I can buy either a trailer to start with so that I can keep my cost of living low, or purchase some kind of cheap piece of property to move either a trailer or house on, figure something else out. It's either that, or I stick it out here in Alaska and I keep working, save up enough money to be able to leave in style. But ultimately that's seeming less and less likely, mainly just because the housing costs in this town have gone through the roof and they don't seem to be going down. There's workers that are needed here seasonally, so a lot of people show up, and the city has a lock as far as building anything large to actually house people here. So unfortunately, housing is expensive. The apartment that I'm living in right now is $11.35 a month. Plus I have to pay electric and the Wi-Fi bill. Now, I live with somebody and that person pays a portion of the rent, but it still makes my monthly nut around $850, $900. And I don't make very much, around $2,500, $2,600 a month. And the cost of living for food, gas, although this is optional, but even things like cannabis and alcohol and all that is higher here. Everything is legitimately more expensive. which makes it hard to justify staying, right, in a place where everything's more expensive. But I love the city. I mean, I like Seward. We have a low population of 2,000 people. The whole town's only a mile long. But again, that introduces a whole lot of problems and negatives right along with the positives of getting to live here. So it is a tough decision, and one that I am contemplating and will probably talk through on this show on multiple occasions. Because it's good to be able to talk about it and lay the whole plan out there. And typically, I would do this with somebody that I'm more conversational with. But this way, I don't need to work around somebody else's schedule. I've been enjoying listening to music again. And getting back into that. I used to be in choir. I was in choir for like 4 years. As gay as shit. But now I don't really get into music. I never really played any actual instruments, so I'm trying to do that. Trying to get into listening to a lot of good music again, which I have not done in forever because all the new music is garbage. So I went back to listening through some vinyls and some things like that, which has been interesting over the last couple weeks. I go back to work tomorrow, and it'll be back to the paperwork grind, although we will definitely be having an Outlawed Thoughts, probably in the middle of the week. We were going to have one earlier today, when it was still July 4th, and not the next night, technically, or next day, technically. But unfortunately, co-hosts were all out and about doing fun stuff, of course, because it's the 4th of July. So we decided I'd just kind of postpone it. And then I decided to do this one because I'd been hanging out. And I figured, yeah, I got an extra 30, 45 minutes or whatever. And I wanted to do one of these because these are going to kind of be sporadic. These are going to be my own shindig. The show is my own creation. It's a lot of rambling and rantings and the things that I enjoy doing, which is almost never going to be what everybody else enjoys doing, but it's something that I like and have fun with. It's just kind of doing nothing, right? Just talking about life, talking about things. And if people eventually want to hang out and talk along with me and maybe have a drink, maybe smoke a little bit, I think that's a good way to live. But that's what this show is going to be all about, and that's all this stream was all about, is just to tell you what you can expect to see on this weird late night show that I hope to make an actual thing someday. And good little update for me, good little update for the channel, good little update for life. Got to see some funny stuff at the beginning. I will talk to y'all later.